Welcome to Professor Explain 101. Today we explore a force older than empires, more intimate than greed, more subtle than ambition. It shapes history, fractures relationships, and whispers to you in quiet moments when you choose a path, speak a sentence, hide a truth, or take a risk. We call it power. Power is not only the grand gestures of rulers and generals, it is the everyday gravity that pulls at your decisions, the way you steer a conversation, the way you resist or yield, the way you build a life and defend it. We crave power because we crave certainty. We crave control because we evolved inside a world that punished the powerless. This hour, we will walk through the roots of power in biology and survival, the illusion that confuses dominance with safety, the neuroscience that rewires thinkers into dictators of their social worlds, the paradoxes and ironies, how power corrupts empathy even as it depends on it, and the ways ordinary people can see power's influence and choose differently. By the end, you'll understand not just why we hunger for control, but how that hunger shows up in your friends, your bosses, your lovers, and maybe, quietly, in you. Section: Origins. Control as survival. Picture a night thousands of generations ago. The campfire is low. The wind smells of bracken and something with teeth. People who could control resources, food, territory, alliances, survived longer. Those who shared, strategized hunts, secured shelter, or negotiated calmer relations had descendants. The rest left no stories. From that crucible, nature baked a simple algorithm into us. Control equals safety. This is not moral judgment. It is evolutionary accounting. Our brains learned that influence reduces randomness, and reduced randomness improves odds of staying alive long enough to reproduce. The circuits that reward certainty, predictability, and dominance were selected for. Jump ahead to modern life. You don't hunt mastodon, but the same circuits still respond to control. A manager who delegates feels safe. A parent who enforces rules feels secure. A driver who speeds to pass cars feels a jolt of mastery. Control still promises less unpredictability, and our bodies respond with relief. But survival wiring is blunt. It doesn't know the difference between wielding a spear to save a family and manipulating a team to inflate one's ego. It only remembers reducing uncertainty was adaptive. So today, in a complex world, control equals safety can misfire. The result? We pursue influence in ways that harm others and ourselves. Illusion of control, how we invent influence. Humans are spectacular meaning makers. When things are messy, we invent patterns. Enter the illusion of control, our tendency to overestimate how much our actions affect random outcomes. We see this in gamblers who believe certain rituals change luck. We see it in managers who believe micromanaging guarantees performance, when in reality it creates disengagement. Why this illusion persists? Uncertainty is painful. To avoid it, we construct narratives. If I do X, Y will follow. The brain loves a causal chain. Even if reality is probabilistic, we reframe it into a story that restores agency. That story is comforting, but it is also dangerous. It turns us into architects of false confidence. We begin to confuse the noise of chance with the music of our control. We double down. We rigidify.
Story: the ruler who could not let go. Imagine a village leader who rose by fixing small problems. He redistributed food effectively, negotiated safe passages, and brokered marriages. People praised him. He felt powerful, and power felt good. Over time, he started micromanaging, checking reports, overruling elders, insisting on ceremonial validations. The more he tried to control, the more the village found ways to surprise him. Resentment brewed. The systems he thought were his instruments became strains. In trying to make the future safe, he made it brittle. This story repeats across history. Thoughtful leaders who saved communities by making decisive moves, only to lose touch when the reward of control rewired them toward protection of power itself.
Story: the ruler who could not let go. Imagine a village leader who rose by fixing small problems. He redistributed food effectively, negotiated safe passages, and brokered marriages. People praised him. He felt powerful, and power felt good. Over time, he started micromanaging, checking reports, overruling elders, insisting on ceremonial validations. The more he tried to control, the more the village found ways to surprise him. Resentment brewed. The systems he thought were his instruments became strains. In trying to make the future safe, he made it brittle. This story repeats across history. Thoughtful leaders who saved communities by making decisive moves, only to lose touch when the reward of control rewired them toward protection of power itself. Power doesn't just change your habits, it changes your brain. When people gain authority, several neural patterns shift. One key change is in systems responsible for social cognition. Power reduces sensitivity to social cues. You become less attuned to others' emotional states. This is not pure myth, it's measurable. The amygdala, prefrontal regions, and circuits involved in mentalizing show altered patterns. Another shift involves dopamine. Power activates reward systems. Because rewards release dopamine, gaining influence becomes reinforcing. The small pleasures of being obeyed, of seeing a plan executed, produce neurochemical payoffs similar to other rewards. The tricky result: power is addictive. We chase another hit. We expand control like someone stacking games on an arcade machine, always wanting one more quarter. A further neurological consequence is decreased inhibition in areas tied to empathy and impulse control. In practice, this looks like bluntness, impatience with nuance, and a narrower range of social imagination. A powerful executive might no longer intuit a junior's discomfort. A successful parent might miss a child's quiet rebellion. Power causes a kind of attentional tunnel vision. The world matters less as sentient people and more as objects to be managed. The power paradox: why the skills that win power are eroded by it. To rise, people often rely on social intelligence, charm, empathy, coalition building. These skills win followers, but once they sit on top, the very empathy that got them there atrophies. Power rewards distance and reward seeking at the cost of attunement. This is the power paradox. You need others' trust to gain power, but power makes you less capable of maintaining that trust. This isn't moralizing, it's structural. It explains why many leaders start humane and become vicious. It explains why movements curdle into regimes. The social environment that elevates a leader doesn't always force them to remain human. Social psychology, the dynamics of dominance. Social psychologists have long studied how power shapes behavior. Classic experiments show that people primed to feel powerful act more on their impulses, take more risks, and behave less courteously. Those primed to feel powerless become more attentive to social threats, more conforming, and often more anxious. Power influences moral behavior in complex ways. On one hand, power enables pro-social acts. A philanthropist can redistribute resources at scale. A CEO can institute humane policies. Power enables. On the other hand, power provides cover for self-interest. When individuals feel invulnerable, ethical constraints can loosen. A striking feature is how quickly people adapt to power. Short-term exposure produces immediate changes. Micro-expressions flatten. Generosity can spike because power allows it, then shrink. Over longer spans, the baseline shifts. This is how small privileges calcify into entitlement.
Cultural dimensions: how society shapes power. Power wears different masks across cultures. Some societies idolize hierarchical control. Others prize egalitarianism. But even in cultures that valorize equality, status hierarchies appear: leadership roles, prestige economies, celebrity. Culture modulates power's expression, but does not eliminate the biological hunger. Rituals, myths, arts, and institutions try to channel the craving towards socially useful ends: community service, ceremonial leadership, meritocratic ladders. But the core pull remains. Consider how religious texts, myths, and literature explore power seduction. The king who loses his way, the tragic hero corrupted by hubris, the cunning advisor who betrays the throne. These stories are social instruction manuals, warnings about the costs of control. Power in relationships, the everyday play. Power shows up not only in governments and boardrooms, but in bedrooms, family dinners, and friendships. Who decides what movie to watch? Who decides to call back? Who interrupts and who listens? These tiny skirmishes are micro-power struggles. Over time, chronic imbalances calcify. A partner who dominates decision-making trains the other to yield. Children learn early whether speaking up has effect or danger. In friendships, subtle displays, who pays, who initiates plans, set the tone. Power in relationships depends on perception. If you feel you can influence outcomes with a partner, you feel powerful. If you habitually compromise to avoid conflict, you may feel powerless even when you have significant leverage. The subjective sense of control matters, sometimes more than objective power. Exercise. A private thought experiment. I want you to picture the last time you felt powerless. Not frustrated, powerless. Hold that memory. Notice where you felt it: chest, throat, stomach. Replay briefly what you did. Now imagine the opposite:
A moment you felt in control. Again, notice the body. Which felt safer? Which felt lonelier? These contrasts reveal a truth. Craving control often masks a deeper emotion, the fear of being erased, overlooked, or made irrelevant. Power gives a badge of existence. It says, I matter. The role of fear, power as defense. At its core, the craving for control is often a defense against fear. Fear of unpredictability, fear of humiliation, fear of scarcity. For some, control is a hedge against shame. For others, it is an armor against anxiety. Power can soothe, for a moment, the feeling that life might run away from you. This defensive view explains behaviors that outsiders call petty or cruel. The boss who publicly humiliates a subordinate may be reacting to their own dread of being undermined. The politician who attacks critics might be trying to shore up a fragile sense of legitimacy. Understand the fear, and you start to read actions differently. Not excuse them, but explain them. Morality and justice. Power's ethical challenge. Power amplifies moral responsibility. Whoever controls resources, laws, or narratives can do vast harm or vast good. That's why institutions matter. They constrain individual appetites. Checks and balances, transparent rules, pluralistic systems. These are not bureaucratic inconveniences. They are social medicines to limit corrupting impulses. At the level of individuals, moral imagination is the antidote to many abuses of control. It's the ability to see yourself in others, to mentally simulate the pain your choices might cause. The more you cultivate moral imagination, by listening, exposure to diverse lives, art, literature, the less likely you are to treat others as mere instruments. Leadership paradigms. Power used for service. Power can be exercised as dominance or as service. The former uses people as means. The latter uses resources to extend agency. Histories remember those who leveraged power for public benefit. The leader who built schools, the CEO who prioritized worker welfare, the activist who used fame to amplify marginalized voices. Leadership as stewardship focuses on distributing control, not hoarding it. Practically, servant leadership includes listening widely, empowering subordinates, creating systems that survive the leader, and building institutions that reward integrity. Power decays when it is concentrated. It endures when it is diffused into structures. Case studies. The small company that flattened its hierarchy. A startup that intentionally reduced managerial layers to speed feedback and distribute decision-making. What happened? Creativity rose, but ambiguity increased. The leader learned the fine art of setting constraints, clear values and decision rules, rather than micromanaging outcomes. The mayor who listened to the margins. A municipal leader who scheduled weekly public listening sessions, then designed policy based on those inputs. The result? Policies with greater legitimacy, fewer implementation failures, and a populace that felt heard, reducing the need for coercive enforcement. The celebrity who conferred power. An artist used platform dollars to seed small community projects. Their power became catalytic rather than acquisitive, leveraging attention into empowerment. These stories share a lesson. Power multiplied by humility yields momentum. Power multiplied by fear yields erosion. The dark side, when power becomes predation. Unchecked power can become predatory. It replicates itself by capturing institutions, silencing critics, and manufacturing consent. Corrupt systems create incentives for abuse, secrecy to avoid accountability, rewards for loyalty over competence, and narratives that justify transgression. The psychology here is chillingly consistent. Rationalization, compartmentalization, and moral disengagement. People start telling themselves stories. It was necessary. Everyone does it. The ends justify the means. With enough insulation, entire cultures of cruelty can form.
How do societies resist? Not by relying solely on virtuous leaders, but by designing institutions that make abuse costly and improbable. Audit trails, separation of powers, free press, civic education. Power and identity. Who you are when you're in control. Power doesn't only change how you act, it changes who you think you are. When you gain status, identity adapts. You may begin to see yourself as exceptional, entitled, or above certain rules. This identity shift is both intoxicating and dangerous. It can warp judgment. Exceptions made for yourself become habits. Watch for identity drift. Notice when your decisions are justified primarily by your need to maintain a self-concept rather than by moral reasons. Pride and shame are strong architects of the story you tell about yourself. Keeping yourself anchored to a practice of self-auditing, asking honest observers how you're perceived, helps reverse drift. How is power maintained? Symbols and techniques. Power is ephemeral unless stabilized. Stabilization often depends on symbols, uniforms, titles, rituals, language. These cues create psychological distance and make obedience habitual. Consider how a judge's robe confers immediate authority, how an empty conference room with a long table shapes conversation. Another technique is control of information. When a leader shapes narratives, they shape reality. Controlling storylines erects barriers to dissent. Institutions that encourage open information flows are therefore powerful checks against abuse. Exercises. How to build healthier power. Practical toolkit. Redundancy. Build systems that don't depend on single points of authority. Rotate responsibilities. Make knowledge shareable. Deliberate humility. Practice what I don't know statements. Ask critics specific questions. Schedule sessions where people can speak anonymously. Slow decision rituals. For high-impact choices, require cooling-off periods and secondary approvals. Delay reduces impulse-driven mistakes. Power audit. Every 6 months, list decisions you made and ask, did I consult the right people? Whose voice was missing? Distribute agency. Design roles so more people can act with delegated authority. Power that is shared scales better. Moral imagination training. Read diverse narratives, volunteer, and create spaces where you must defend opposing viewpoints. This enlarges your capacity to feel others' stakes. Deconstructing personal cravings. If you crave control, name the fear underneath. Is it scarcity? Shame? Past trauma? Often early experiences, being silenced, abused, neglected, push people to seek rigid control later as self-protection. Therapy, journaling, or honest conversations can diffuse the instinct to dominate. When the protective function of control is acknowledged, it loses some of its fearful urgency. Ethical dilemmas. When control is necessary. There are moments when control is necessary. In crises, for safety, to prevent harm. What matters is how control is exercised. Coercion for prevention is ethical. Coercion for protection of self-interest is not. The moral line is intention and proportionality. A parent may insist on rules for a child's safety. This is protective power. A leader who imposes control to suppress legitimate dissent misuses power. The fine art is calibrating the degree of control to the magnitude of the threat and always ensuring against mission creep. The future of power. Technology, data, and new forms. Power is changing. Data, algorithms, surveillance tech, and platform architecture create new asymmetries. Those who control data influence attention, preferences, and behavior at scale. Algorithms make subtle nudges more powerful than overt decrees. This shift demands new ethical frameworks. We must ask, who owns our attention? Who monetizes our choices? How do we design technological systems that distribute agency rather than concentrate it? Closing thoughts. A call to humility. Power is neither inherently evil nor inherently good. It is a tool, a force. It amplifies intentions. In the hands of curiosity and compassion, it builds schools, heals communities, and protects the vulnerable. In the hands of fragility and fear, it destroys trust, isolates, and devastates. Understanding the psychology of power is the first step to stewarding it. Know your fears. Design institutions that check your worst impulses. Practice humility. Share agency. Cultivate moral imagination. These are not soft virtues. They are practical technologies for sustainable influence. If this hour has changed the way you view a boss, a politician, a lover, or yourself, then we have done the work. Power is everywhere and subtle. It will call to you. Learn its language. Master its instruments. But never forget the company you keep while wielding it. If you like this exploration, subscribe to Professor Explain 101. Share this video with someone whose decisions matter, a manager, a parent, a friend. Leave a comment with one time you saw power used for good. Tell us, what did it feel like? Until next time, keep asking hard questions. Keep examining the invisible forces around you. And remember, the greatest power may be the power to make life safer for others than it is for yourself. Professor Explain 101.